Our next guest, appropriately, is the Governor of the Youth Parliament of Victoria, Amanda Gailiss. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Now, I understand you've only just been appointed Governor. Who appointed you?
So the Youth Governor is elected by the Youth Parliamentarians.
Yes.
So I'm a member of the volunteer task force who run the program, and we have an election. So we had the election on Wednesday evening in which the Youth Parliamentarians were able to vote, as well as the task force, and I was selected as the Youth Governor.
So in fact, the Youth Parliament then is more democratic than the actual Parliament, because the Governor for the actual Parliament is just really appointed by the Queen.
I guess you could say that.
Tell us about the Youth Parliament for a start. How young do you have to be a member?
So Youth Parliament is a program for 16 to 25-year-olds.
Right.
It's been running for the past 30 years, so this year is its 30th year anniversary. It's a 6-day residential program with a training weekend as well, and we go to Parliament House on Monday, Tuesday and Thursday of this week, which has already passed, and get to debate bills that we've written ourselves. It's pretty exciting.
How many members of the Youth Parliament are there?
So there's 120 participants and 17.
So it's like the size of a real parliament then?
Yes, it is.
How do they select people for it?
So we have an application process. We have 20 teams of 6 people. They get to put forward ideas that they would like to debate in Parliament, and then we select them based on the merit of their application.
So what sort of ideas have you been debating recently?
So in this Youth Parliament, we've debated things such as girls' access to education and health products, S-plates for senior drivers, smoking prohibition for people born after the year 2020, and pill testing at Victorian events.
Should a youth parliament be trying to restrict what senior drivers do on the road?
I guess it depends on who's debating it. The bill was defeated, which means that it didn't pass through the Youth Parliament. It's just more about the values and the ideas behind the bill necessarily,
Do you have parties or factions?
No, the most wonderful thing about Youth Parliament is that you vote with your conscience. So unlike Parliament, we don't have party lines, completely apolitical program. If you believe in the value of the bill, then you can vote for, and if you don't believe in it, you can vote against.
It's interesting because that's what the American Congress is actually like. Although they do formally have the Republicans and the Democrats, the reality is that they never vote as blocks. You know, each bill is put forward and you get mixtures of people from both parties voting for it. And sometimes I think that might make life far more interesting here. Out of interest, have you been paying a lot of attention to the federal election campaign over the past 9 weeks?
Yes, I have. I'm very interested in politics, in case you wouldn't have realised. I think it's really important to understand what's going on and make an informed decision before you vote. So I like to follow it so I can really vote for the party or vote for whoever I think would best represent my values.
What do you think have been the big issues of this campaign? I'll preface that by saying that, unfortunately, I think this whole CFA dispute in Victoria has really been the major issue in this state, even though, technically speaking, it's not actually a federal issue. What for you have been the big issues?
I think ideas such as the environment, marriage equality, and furthermore, things such as tax, that's also a huge issue. Yeah. On
marriage equality, I had here in the studio yesterday, I had a Labor person, a Liberal person and the leader of the Greens. They all agree personally for same-sex marriage, but they disagree on how to get there.
Yeah.
Do you think Malcolm Turnbull's idea of a plebiscite is a good one?
I think there's both merit and issues with that. It really depends on who's making that decision, whether they believe that it's worth spending the money on it. I really don't have an issue either way. If that's what they believe is best for our country, then I think they should go for it.
If you'd like to speak to the Governor of the Victorian Youth Parliament and potential future politician, Amanda Gailiss, give us a ring, 96900 693 13 13 32. On that, do you actually want to be I won't say a proper politician, but do you want to be a non-youth but adult politician at some stage?
It's something that has crossed my mind. Sometimes I think political debate can be clouded with other things that aren't necessarily about the merit of policy or about the betterment of society in general.
Well, you mean like emotions and egos and factions and all that sort of thing?
Possibly, yes.
You better get used to that if you stay in politics.
Yeah. So I think it just depends on my career path in the future and what I decide that might be. You never know what's going on in the future, so I think it's best to wait and see, play it by ear.
My mother was a state parliamentarian in the 90s to the early 2000s, and what I saw with what she did, it made me think that I would never, ever, ever want to follow her into that particular particular career. Tell me, as the governor, do you function as a sort of moderator of the youth parliament? What exactly do you do in it?
So my role as a youth governor is to represent the program as best I can. So liaising with media, stakeholders, and just generally rallying youth parliamentarians together to give them the best experience they can have.
Let's say, you debate a bill like some of the ones you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
and you come to a majority conclusion on it. Does it go any further? Do you go to the Minister for Youth Affairs and say, here's what we've come up with, could you please do something with it?
Actually, funny you mentioned that. Jenny Makakos was at our closing ceremony and we passed the bills on to her that have passed Youth Parliament. There's also a lot of interaction with the ministers throughout our journey from writing the bills to debating them at Parliament House. We organise meetings with different ministers to discuss what the participants' bills are about. So there is a lot of interaction with politicians leading up to the camp as well as on the camp.
Can I tell you something? If you do want to be a politician, you need to get better at not answering the question. Because thus far you've actually answered every question I've put to you in a succinct manner. And that is something that no politician ever does.
Well, maybe we'll change that up a bit later on.
All right, we'll go to some calls in a moment. 96900 693 13 13 32. Questions for Amanda Gailiss, the Governor of the Youth Parliament of Victoria, at 16 past 5.